So a lot of you have been asking me to make this video on how to plan, structure, design, architect your mobile application. If you've been watching a bunch of my videos, you'll notice that the biggest thing that I keep hitting on is take your time to plan out building your mobile application, because that makes everything so much easier for you. So the more time you take in planning, the easier it will be for you to develop your app. The first thing you need to do is picking the app you want to build, right? Figure out the problem you're trying to solve, figure out what you're trying to build, and then go from there. In this example, we're going to say fitness app. Next thing you want to do is figure out the features that you're going to have on this app. For example, in a fitness app, you'd have users being able to log workouts, users being able to explore or display various workouts, users being able to create, upload their workout, being able to switch between dark and light, all those type of features. Write those down because they're going to be very crucial. And the next critical thing that you need to do is to create your flowchart. Then figure out the kind of navigation you're going to need in your app. This is very important because it's going to help you understand exactly how your app is going to work. If you don't want to build it and you want someone else to build it, they're going to understand exactly how it's going to work. In this example here, for the fitness app, once they launch the app, if they're a new user or an old user, if they're an old user, they go into the onboarding screen. You would have your welcome screen, your feature screen, your sign-in screen, which then leads to either a sign up or a forgot password screen. And then once they're logged in, this is where the navigation part comes in. There's two types of navigation. You have the tabs navigation, which is pretty much, in this case, your home screen, your log screen, and your settings screen. And literally all that's happening is when you click that tab, that screen opens, right? And then you have under them, let's say for example in the settings screen, the screen that says profile. So when you click the profile, it takes you to a screen, right? But that screen is on top or under the settings screen, which makes it a stack. So that's the difference between a tab navigation and a stack navigation. So you have your tab navigation screen, and then when you have your stack right under it, when you click the profile screen, it comes in a stack on top of that. And then when you want to go back, you unstack, kind of like a deck of cards. That's a good way to think about it. The next thing on the list is designing your app. You could use Figma to design it. You could use pen and paper. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just have to just draw things down, put as much detail as you can. You could usually provide your flowchart and your pen and paper design to a professional designer, and they can help you make it better and so on. Personally, I prefer pen and paper. It's just easy. I'm doing it on the go. I can do it whenever I want, wherever I want. Personally, that's my preference. That's just me. That's just me. Next is choosing the platform and the stack that you want to use. Let's say you're building your app and you want your app to be just for iOS. Then you can use Swift, which is like the native language for iOS. And if you want your application to be just for Android, then you can use Kotlin, which is the native language for Android. Now, if you want your application to be cross-platform, you have the option of using React Native or Flutter. Personally, I prefer React Native. That's what I've been using. Some people like Flutter and so on. Either way, you need to figure out what stack you're going to use, learn about that stack, understand how it works, because that's going to just help you know what you're doing as you're getting into it. By now, you know the app you're going to build, you know the features it's going to have, you have your flowchart, and then you have your designs, and you know the stack that you're going to use. The next step would be figuring out the back-end services that you're going to use. Remember how you had to write down your features? That's where this is going to start coming into play, because now you have to do, okay, well, do you need a database? Do you need authentication, user authentication? Do you need to host a backend? Do you need monetization? Do you need external APIs? You're gonna have to ask all these questions to figure out what backend services you're going to need. So you have like the platform as a service backend services. For example, that includes AWS, Heroku, DigitalOcean. These are pretty much where you would host your backend if you're trying to like hide your API or you want to have your backend running on a cloud server and so on. And then you have your BAS, which are like backend as a service. And you have like Firebase, you have Supabase, you have MongoDB. Like there's a lot of various services that you could use. Personally, I usually use Firebase just because you have authentication on there, you have a database on there, and I just have been using it. I just prefer it works for me. You could use whatever works for you, but you need to figure out these things ahead of time. Your monetization. So in this case, chances are you're building obviously for iOS or Android. You got to figure out, okay, what payment service do you want to use? Personally, I use Revenue Cat because it's a cross-platform. You could literally integrate it for iOS and you can integrate it for Android, and it works perfectly. You have to decide if you want to add ads to your application. Your final thing is the external API. So are you going to integrate OpenAI? Are you going to integrate a workout API? You just have to decide all these things ahead of time. And another key thing that I want to mention is for your platform as a service. So like either if you want to decide whether to use DigitalOcean, AWS, or Heroku. They are not free, and you kind of have to make the decision for yourself, like if you need it, at least at the start. The way to figure out if you really do or not is, are you going to have any APIs or anything that if someone has an access to, they could use it up and run your money up? If the answer is no, the Rapid API would be a perfect example. If you're using Rapid API, chances are you probably want to hide your API key. If you're using OpenAI, chances are you probably want to hide your API key. All those type of things, chances are you're going to need a cloud server that you can host your backend on. That way someone doesn't reverse engineer your app and get your API key and run it up. If you're not doing any of those things, you're probably fine just using Firebase and your app should be good. The next on the list is figuring out the libraries that you're going to need. And this is very crucial because based on your features, based on the stack you're going to use, you're going to go through all the type of libraries or things that you're going to require. You don't have to do this, but it saves you so much time. Sometimes you literally have a bug and you have no clue why you're getting that bug, and it was just because you installed a library and you didn't rebundle the app. These are examples of libraries that you in React Native you'd use. So you have the React Native paper, so that would be for like components. You have the Firebase, you have the Expo router library. So these are all example libraries that you would need to make things easier at the start. Obviously you would add more as you go. Now the final part, which I believe is the hardest part of the whole thing and probably the part that most of you are here for, which is the folder and file structure. I'm going to focus on React Native Expo because that's the one that I obviously work on. There's different ways you can do this. If you're using Expo router, you can do like the file structure type of navigation, but if you're using React Native Navigation, you actually have to hard code the navigation, you have to hard code the tabs, you have to hard code the stacks and so on, and it can be annoying. I'm just going to focus on Expo router because that's the latest navigation strategy. At this point, you know what your app is, you know the features that it's going to have, you know what your backend is going to be, you know your flowchart, like you already kind of have an understanding of how your app is going to work. Now you have to take all those things and convert them into your folder/file structure. For our fitness app, which is the example that I'm going to use, remember when you create your React Native Expo app, you have a bunch of templates there and so on, but these are the key ones that you want to focus on prior to start developing. So for our fitness app, this is an example of what it would look like. Obviously there's more things you're going to add as you go, but this is kind of like the template that would help make things so much easier for you. So if you're creating a budgeting app, you can follow the same structure and just switch things around that you think you're going to need. The app folder is where all your screens are, and then as you can see under it, you have the onboarding folder. This onboarding folder is where all your pre-authentication screens are going to be. So you have your welcome screen, your sign-in screen, your sign-up screen, forgot password screen. Users that don't have an account to the app, this is going to be the first things that you want them to see. And then you have your tabs folder, exactly what it sounds like, your tabs. These are all your tab screens. So you have your home screen, your log screen, and your settings screen. Another thing that you notice here is the layout. So this layout is what tells you how the screens are stacked. If you want to add some design to them, like how you want to actually manipulate those screens, this is what helps you do that. And then at the root of the folder, you have your layout, you have your index, and you have your not found. So the index is your entry point of the app, the first thing you want the users to see. So for example, when the user opened the app, you can in there have a logic that says if the user is authenticated, they should navigate directly to the tab screen. But if they're not authenticated, they should navigate to the onboarding folder. And the not found is like for some reason you mistakenly added a screen that is not actually in this folder. This is the screen that you get, and at that point you kind of know, okay, this screen is not here, or maybe you didn't spell it right or something like that. And then you have your splash screen. This is optional. The next is the components. So the components is pretty much your buttons, your cards, just anything that you feel like, okay, you don't want to have to rebuild this on every screen and so on. For example, let's say you create a workout card that displays all the workout details, right? Well, you don't want to create that in the home screen where you can see all the workouts and click them and see the details. You also don't want to recreate that in the log screen when you have logged your workout and you want to see the details. You don't want to do that there either, right? So you can just have one workout card that displays all those things and it shows it on, wherever you call it or want to use it. So that's where your components comes in. Then your context is to control your global state, like your context API. This is where you add all the different APIs that you want to use globally in your app. So for example, I'll use the theme context. So you create your theme context and then you wrap your entire app with it. So in here, this part that says layout in the root of that app folder in the code base, you would actually wrap the app with the theme context. That way, when you change the theme, your entire app theme changes. Same thing with the authentication. When a user is authenticated, they're authenticated through the entire app, not just, you know, one screen, not just one location, and you don't have to go to each time and call it. You can just wrap your entire app with it. The next on the list is your hooks or your custom hooks. There's, you know, already created hooks, and then there's your custom hook that you can create. These are just reusable logic. We already talked about the context. This is kind of like a step under that. Let's say you created your user authentication. This is pretty much to let you know if your user is authenticated or not, the logic for that. Well, when you want to use that logic in another screen, you don't want to have to always rewrite that code. You don't want to have to always, you know, write that whole logic to figure out if a user is authenticated or not in every single screen. So what you could do is write it once, create a hook for it, and then just reuse that logic in any screens. And then your services, this is pretty much where you have all your external links, services, have your Firebase, Rapid API. There you have it. So that's kind of like an overview of how you can plan, design, architect, and structure your app before you go into developing it. Obviously, you can change a bunch of things here. You can make things better. This is just a template that you can use to build whatever you're trying to build. I hope this was helpful. I'm really happy that I finally got it done because I've been procrastinating this one for a while, but there you have it. Happy New Year to every single one of you. Hope you guys had great holidays with your friends and family. Peace.